Hey folks, uh, what we've got here is a type of fungus that grows on a pine tree. This particular piece I found growing on a pine tree here at the cabin, and I picked it. This one is basically looks like the same type of material, fungus material, that we found on our camping trip last week we were in the Talladega National Forest at the time, and we found that. This morning on our walk, we found this piece of fungus. There was actually two of these growing on an injured spot on a water oak, and I felt of it, and it's got that nice spongy feel to it, but it's very wet, and it won't work like it is. It's going to have to dry out an awful lot before that can even be an experiment with that can even be considered. But what I've done is, in advance, I've put together a bunch of little fire building material, and we're going to attempt via solar ignition to create a fire using a piece of this tinder fungus. And in advance, I've made up some little flash tinder material. That's some jute twine. In the wild, you can find a lot of stuff that will work well instead of using jute twine. One of my favorite is in the wintertime to find goldenrod and pick what was the flower heads, and they're very fine, and they got little tiny twigs. They make a really good flash tinder. And then I've got a little bit of inner bark from a tulip poplar or a yellow poplar, and we're going to use some of that in our fire making. I've got some shavings of fat wood. We call it lightered. Some people call it fat lightered. Some people call it fat wood, and our smalls that go on, and gradually larger sticks. I've also got a few pieces of lightered that we'll add in there to help extend the flame. That's really important in wet weather. You may have to use quite a bit of it in wet weather, but it burns so hot that it'll dry out your material that you're trying to turn into a fire. Let's get a chunk of this. I'm going to have to walk out into the open. I'm going to go over here and get a little fire in the sun. And it's smoldering away. This burns hot, it burns long. And it's a great resource when you can find it. Let's see if we can build a fire. Put that down underneath. I'm going to lay a little of this jute twine up on here, just a flash tinder, something that'll catch and go in a hurry. I'm going to sprinkle a little of this, some of these fat lightered shavings on there. Let's put a few more. and you got plenty of it, you don't have to be stingy. Let's add a little something on top of that with the inner bark from the tulip poplar. And then we want to layer little smalls up there. Stack them in there. Let's add a couple of these little sticks of fat wood. And in a situation where you're building your fire, what you do is you would continue to lay up your fire lay by adding gradually larger sticks until you've got larger wood, your fuel wood. Now this is an antenna from my old work truck. It's starting to smoke, and it makes a great little blowpipe. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to cut it into pieces about 1/3 long and attach a piece of plastic tubing to it so that only this end is in the fire, and then you can blow through the plastic tubing to accomplish the same thing. If you're a DIY type of person, they're easy to make. If you're not a DIY type of person, I can recommend our friends John and Denise McCann at Survival Resources. In their store, they have those already made up, and you can purchase those and have them in your kit. Let's see if we can get a fire going. And there you have it, folks. Fire by fungus, using a little bit of sunlight, a little piece of tender fungus. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trying to find, I've not been successful yet, but I'm trying to find a type of fungus that will work with primitive flint and steel. The primitive flint and steel has a smaller spark, I call it a cooler spark, and I've yet, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in this part of the world, but I've yet in this part of the world to find a fungus that will work with a primitive flint and steel. But a ferro rod and a source for solar ignition, a simple little magnifying lens that you can carry in your kit accomplishes a great deal and can accomplish a great deal for you, especially in a survival situation where you need to conserve your resources and extend your resources for an extended period of time. Thanks for watching.